Welcome to the CAPS tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to learn on how to apply for a procurement that has been posted by CSC. The tutorial will include a mock procurement and none of the questions or scenarios relate to a live procurement or any procurement that may be posted by CSC in the future. This video will use acronyms such as CAPS, which is the Contracts Administration and the Procurement System, which is the online portal used to apply for any procurements, CSC, which is Children's Services Council of Broward County, RFP, RFQ stand for Request for Proposals or Qualifications, EIN or the SunBiz number stand for the Employer Identification Number, and AFF stands for the Application for Funding. Any procurement that has been posted by CSC would be made available on the main website at www.cscbroward.org on its main page and also on the Providers Funding Opportunities page. On the Funding Opportunities page, you will also find any and all tutorials such as this video be available for you to refer to in the future while applying for a procurement. So once you select the procurement that you would like to apply from this page, you would land on a page that looks like this, which lists the published date and the expiration date and a brief description of the RFP that has been posted. Today, we're going to work with the 2021 enhancement test. I'm going to go ahead and click on this particular procurement, which will land me on a page that shows me the timetable or the timeline attached with the procurement, any attachments such as the full RFP document, rating tool, etc. The type of procurement it is, so in this case it's an RFP, the date it was made available, the due date, the time remaining, and the expiration date. To download any attachments, you would need to sign in. If you do not have a login, the system will prompt you to create a login. You can start an application by clicking on either spot on the top left or the blue Start a New Application. Also, the Ask a Question will be made available to you in the time frame that Ask a Question has been posted by CSC. So let's go in and start a new application. So in this case, I'm going to use a test user and log into the system. If you're a new user, you would just need to put in your first name, last name, and email address to proceed with the application. You would land on the same page if you were to download any attachments or resources from the main page. So I'm going to use applications 10 and go ahead and log into the system. The first thing that the system does is prompt me to update my contact information. Once I update my contact information, it asks me if I'm applying as an individual or an agency. If I'm going to choose an agency for now and select my organization. There are some organizations that are already available in the drop-down list. If your organization is not listed, click on Organization Not Listed, and you will be prompted to enter your employer identification number, which will pull your organization from the SunBiz website and auto-populate in the system. So for now, I'm going to just select something from the drop-down list and proceed. Then it prompts me to put in a application name, and in this case, I'm going to put it in as a test application. If you're applying for more than one procurement on CSC's website, this is for your reference to appropriately label your applications so you know how to organize them or you can refer to them easily on your end. If you're working with any co-authors, this is the place where you would add your co-author. You would simply click on Add More, enter their title, first name, last name, email, phone, and check on Send them an email so that they're prompted to create a login for the system on their end. This will allow them to work on the application or the proposal simultaneously with you. In this case, I'm going to apply this myself and click on Proceed. So once you click on Proceed, you'll land on a page which states your application name, your agency name, the status of your application, which is currently in progress, the due date, and the expiration date. It will also give your application an ID number. You will see that on the right-hand side, there is a pod called Sections. These are all the sections associated with this application for funding and this procurement. Each section may have a different deadline. So in this case, the agency financial viability is due on 6/25, whereas all the other sections are due on 6/30. You will also see a modify button on the top ribbon and also modify blue buttons in the particular sections. You can start to complete your application by clicking on either of the modify buttons. If you're an agency that knows that you will use a fiscal sponsor to apply, you can add your fiscal sponsor by clicking on the Edit button in the Add a Fiscal Sponsor tab. Once you go here, You can either choose from an organization from the drop-down list or click on organization not listed and enter the fiscal sponsor's EIN number and their name and assign them as a fiscal sponsor. In this case, we will apply without a fiscal sponsor for now. The process to add a fiscal sponsor after the financial viability would be the same, or midway through the application would be the same, as long as you're doing it before its deadline date. The files pod lists any and all files that you upload into this particular proposal or AFF. The solicitation attachments are all the attachments that you saw on the first page where you started the new application. You can also view the solicitation by clicking on View Solicitation, which will land you on the first page that you were on where you started the application. Ask a question is still available for you, and you can submit a question to CSC as long as you're within the time frame of submitting questions. You can also print your application by clicking on Print. And again, the view application is the long form view of your full application. You will see that there is a Submit Full Application to CSC button that's grayed out. This will only be made available to you once all the red X's turn into a green check mark. It will also tell you that the full application has not yet been submitted. It can only be submitted after all sections have been marked complete. So let's go in and modify this application. So I'm going to go in and click on Modify Forms. And once I do that, I'm going to attach the files that this section is asking. You'll see that it's asking to upload 2 files. So I'm going to select them from my computer. Please be very mindful of the file types that you're attaching. If an incorrect file is attached, it may not be considered. So please be mindful of the file type and also the label. So I'm going to go ahead and select the second file as well. And then you'll see that there's a Mark this section completed checkbox that's been provided. So if you think that you've attached the correct file types and you want to move on, you can check this off and click on Next. But if you, for some reason, it was not the correct response and you wanted to swap it out later, you can just click on Save and Continue Later. If you click on Save and Continue Later, the section will not turn into a green check mark. It will stay as a red X, which is informing you that this section needs your attention and you need to go in and verify information. You'll still see that the files that you attached are still in here. So let's say for now that I am confirming that these are the correct files and I want to move on and truly mark this section as completed. I'm going to check off Mark this section as completed and go to the next section. So as soon as I do that, it turns into a green check mark. The next section is the agency financial viability. So this section is extremely important. This is the only section that once you submit it to CSC, it cannot be recalled. And you'll see a warning here that this section can't be modified or recalled once submitted. So be mindful of the section deadline and also the file types you're attaching, as mentioned previously, that once you submit it, you cannot modify this section. Whereas all other sections are available for you to modify up until the deadline for the procurement or until you do the final submission of the application to CSC. The agency financial viability gives you 4 options. If you choose to submit your audited financial statements, reviewed statements, or you can also choose that CSC currently has your most recent audited or reviewed financial statements on file, or if you're an agency that is going to assign a fiscal sponsor from the get-go, as we previously talked about, you can choose the 4th option. So pick your correct options. If you're choosing your audited financial statements, you would click on Audited Financial Statements and choose the appropriate file in the Audited Financial Statements section, attach it, and proceed further. Let's say you were not going to choose your audited financial statements and just do the reviewed statements. You would repeat the same process, but check off reviewed financial statements and choose the appropriate file and attach it in that particular section, pod. Let's say you select that CSC currently has the most recent audited or reviewed financial statements. You'll just click on that option. In this scenario, you do not need to attach any files, as you're indicating that CSC has them on file, and the decision would be made based on the review of that file, and you would receive it later through the process. If you're an agency that's assigning a fiscal sponsor from the get-go, click on Agency Chooses Not to Submit Financial Statements and will assign a fiscal sponsor, and repeat the process of assigning a fiscal sponsor that we spoke about earlier in the application process. Please be sure to assign your fiscal sponsor, enter their organization name, and assign them as a fiscal sponsor, which will prompt them to log into the system and complete the steps that they need to do in order for your application to be considered. So in this case, I'm going to attach the audited statements, and I'm just attaching a test file for the purpose of this tutorial. And I am going to click on next. If I click on next without marking the section completed, or if I click on save and continue later, I'll still be able to modify it, because what it tells me is that I haven't submitted it to CSC yet. And how I know that is it's still a red X. However, if I were to mark this section as completed and click on next, it will be submitted to CSC, and there will not be the ability to do a recall from your end. And I want you to pay attention that this is your screen. So it's telling you that you've submitted or you've completed the agency financial viability on this date. However, when you go into the applications details view, it's still showing as a red X. So what this means is that yes, you've submitted it, but it's still pending review from CSC end. When CSC does the review, you'll receive a decision. The decision would be sent to you via an email notification prompting you to log into the system and to accept or deny that decision. Or if you're already logged into the system, you would see on the main dashboard or on the screen on the top left, or also under the agency financial viability. Once you accept the decision or assign a fiscal sponsor, whatever the case may be, once you make that decision, that is when this will turn into a green check mark. So until you accept it, it's going to remain as a red X under the application details page, and the submit full application to CSC would still remain grayed out until you receive green checks on all these sections. I also want you to notice that the warning that it states that the financial viability section must be completed, reviewed by CSC, and the award limitation must be accepted by the agency before the full application can be submitted for consideration. It also states that the full application has not yet been submitted. The application can only be submitted after all sections have been marked completed. So let's go back into the modify view and go to the next section that you want to modify. So let's go to the agency details section number 1. The first question is a Q&A. You'll see that it has a word limit of 900 words. You'll also see that there's a word tracker at the bottom. Once I start typing, it keeps a track of how many words are remaining, and it will not allow you to type beyond 900 words. This is a plain text box. So if you are copy pasting your response, keep it in a format-free version on your Word and paste it, which will be the easiest way for you to paste. If you're trying to paste beyond 900 words, the system will cut it off at 900 words. So be mindful of the word limit. Since it's a plain text box, you cannot highlight, underline, or italicize anything. Everything must be done in plain text only. The next question is a yes or no. If I were to select no, nothing really happens. If I select yes, there may be additional questions that I may need to answer. So there could be some questions in your AFF that have a yes and no, and depending on your response, you may have extra information that you may need to provide. So for now, I'm going to mark this section as completed, click on next. And I want you to see that every time I do that, I still have the ability to go in and modify the sections that I've already marked as completed. So the forms was marked as completed, so was the agency detail section 1, but I still have the modify buttons available. And that is happening before because the procurement deadline hasn't passed, and also that you haven't submitted the full application to CSC. If you were to submit the full application to CSC, those modifies would go away, or if it's beyond the deadline, it would go away. So let's go into the second section. It's a chart form. So here it's asking you to enter a chart and an entry. So I'm going to click on new entry, and I'm going to answer the questions that it's asking and save my entry. So once I do that, you'll see that entry pop up on the chart. You can also do a second entry and as many as you like, depending on what's being asked. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this section as completed and go to the next section. The next section is the budget section. It's asking you to upload a file. Please, again, be very mindful of the file type that you upload, and it's the correct file. If it's an incorrect file that you upload, it may not be considered. You can also see that a sample program budget template has been provided to you here. It's a hyperlink, so if you were to click on this, it takes you to a page, and you can download and print this template, or just view it in this screen. I'm going to go ahead and click on back and upload a budget file. So I'm going to attach it here, mark the section as completed, and click on save and continue later. So again, this is your view. It's telling that you've completed all the sections. You still have the ability to modify all sections besides the agency financial viability section. It says to submit your full application, click on the application details view. So I'm going to click there. But here I can see that I'm still waiting for CS to make a decision on the agency financial viability. That's the only section that's a red X. All others are into a green check mark. But because we have one red X, the submit full application to CSC is not available. But up until this point, you still can modify any other section that is needed. If you need to modify it, you can just click on modify and proceed. So now I'm going to go in as on the back end and make a decision on your agency financial viability, and then show you what happens on your end. So when CSC makes a decision on your financial viability, you'll receive a notification from the system via an email, which is going to tell you what that decision is. So currently the decision was made, and I received an email saying I have no award limitations. It also prompts me to go into my application and accept the decision. So if you're logged out, you can log in via the link provided in the email, or if you're already logged in, which I am right now, I would just refresh my page, and it will prompt me to accept the maximum qualifying amounts. Also, it says the status, which is no award limitations. I can do this in two spots, either accept it on the top left here, or also under the agency financial viability where it says accept max qualifying amount. If the decision was something else, such as provisional or conditional, the buttons here would say provisional or conditional, and you would have a second option to assign a fiscal sponsor. So if you were to assign a fiscal sponsor, you would click on the assign a fiscal sponsor and go through the same process that we spoke about earlier on in this tutorial. And the fiscal sponsor would get notified and would have to complete their part in order for your application to get considered. So for now, let's just go in and accept max qualifying amount. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you will see that all these red X's are now green check marks, and the submit full application to CSC buttons become available. Again, you can still modify any section up until now if you want to. If not, and if you're ready to submit your full application, you can do so as well. Keep in mind that in order to submit the full application, you have to be under the view application view. If you're under the modify view, it still just gives you only the ability to submit it. But again, you have a warning that for you to submit the full application to CSC, you need to go into the application details tab and submit the full application to CSC. Also note that your application status is currently sitting in progress. As soon as you submit it, it will go into the submit status. You'll see that there's a couple of cache buttons provided on the page. If for some reason your page is not refreshing, we suggest just clicking on cache. It makes your page refresh and information pop up smoother and easier. We recommend using the cache button every so often, just so that it's clear and all information is being displayed properly. So if you're ready to submit the full application to CSC, just go in and click on submit full application to CSC. There'll be a warning that pops up that are you sure you want to submit it? Click on OK. And your application has been received by CSC. All the modify buttons have disappeared, and you just have a long form view of all the Q&A and your responses. And also under the files pod, you will see that there's now a lot of files. These are all the files that were provided by you with your proposal that were submitted to CSC. Authorized agency users is you, and if it's if you've added anybody else, they would be listed down here. Solicitation attachments is again all the attachments associated with this procurement. You can access them at any time you want to. This video will also be available to you under the solicitation attachments, so you will have easy access if you need to refer to anything here. This concludes our tutorial. Thank you.